Charge Live podcast. I'm Joseph Barletta, and this is where we discuss EVs and all things EV charging. Glad you could pull over and park with us today, so let's get plugged in. Hey, look, today's episode is all about Tesla Powerwall versus Tesla PowerShare. Which is best? You're going to love this one. Hey, look, before we begin today's episode, it's brought to you by Smart Charge America. Since 2007, Smart Charge America has installed tens of thousands of EV charging stations nationwide, and they can do the same for you today. Whether in the home, commercial, or service, let their team of expert installation specialists guide you to the best charging solution for your EV charging needs. After all, if you can't charge, you can't drive. Visit smartchargeamerica.com today to get started. Okay, today's episode, Tesla Powerwall versus PowerShare. I have today's special guest speaker, Mr. David Laderberg, Vice President of Smart Charge America. He is fully engulfed in all things Tesla, Cybertruck, PowerShare. And so what we wanted to do was just kind of take today's episode and break it down kind of sort of as much as we can in layman's terms, really, and just share it with our audience members, because we've been getting a lot of feedback from the Tesla's Cybertruck Owners Club and a lot of our customers with regards to like just some confusion here and there and kind of what works, what's best. And so that's one of the topics that we're hoping to discuss today. So I'll just go ahead and open up today's conversation. I mean, first we'll talk about the pros and cons. Let's talk about the pros and cons of the Powerwall versus the PowerShare. Now, this nice little fancy gateway system here, this is a gateway cover. This will be representing today in our background the aesthetics of the PowerShare feature, and this nice box here will represent our Powerwall. Why? Because the Powerwall weighs what? How much?
Hundreds of pounds. Too much.
Too much for us to lift up and put on this thing. So overall, we'll make do with the background. But needless to say, let's talk about our pros and cons for the Powerwall versus PowerShare. Powerwall, go ahead. You could talk a little bit more about Powerwall. What in your opinion differentiates and is a pro on the Powerwall side of things?
Yeah, so I'll approach it based on what most people are coming to us with, which is, hey, I got a Cybertruck, I got the Foundation series, I'm getting this PowerShare functionality. But what about Powerwall? Versus PowerShare? Do I get both? What if I want to add one later? The cost of Powerwall is notable, right? So that is always a consideration. But why would you want to add Powerwall if you already have a Cybertruck or PowerShare is included? So the biggest things that are, the value add of Powerwall to start is instant seamless failover. So in the event of a grid outage, Powerwall is completely seamless, right? We're talking milliseconds, imperceivable. In fact, really, if a grid goes out, you wouldn't know it probably until you look at your phone and see the Tesla mobile app, or someone, a neighbor calls you and asks if you have power. So that's about it. So Powerwall first, absolutely seamless. PowerShare is not. You're looking at least a few seconds downtime. At most, you can get 30, 40 seconds or more in some cases. If the vehicle, obviously, if you just plugged in the vehicle and the house didn't have power to start with, to initialize, connect, communicate, do the handshakes with the charger, it just takes time for it to do that. So that obviously you're going to have some downtime. Internet's going to have to reboot. So there's things like that aren't quite as smooth. And Powerwall is seamless. So other benefits of Powerwall, why would you want that? Well, it's also time-based control. And what's unique about that with respect to Powerwall is that if your utility and your utility plan has different time of use rates, meaning, for instance, it's most common, let's say, between like 12 and 6 p.m. on a daily basis, the power cost of electricity is much higher. And maybe at night from like, say, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., it's half as much. So it's much cheaper. So what Powerwall can do, assuming it's configured for time-based control, is you can set that up inside the Tesla app with those rates, and it will actually pull power from the grid when it's cheapest, and then dispense that power for your home when the grid is most expensive. So very simple, just basically save it when it's, buy it from the grid when it's cheap, use it when it's most expensive. So buy now, use it later. Great way. That's why it's called kind of time shifting or time-based control is the idea there. So it's a great way to save some money. It's not the reason to go out and buy a Powerwall is what I tell people. It's not necessarily going to pay for itself just by doing that alone, because every utility is different. The rates differ. It can be all over the place. But that's just one of a nice value adds. The other is solar self-consumption. So then, the next thing is, assuming you have solar with your Powerwall, it's something that will allow you, anytime you have excess solar production that is greater than what, say, your home is using at any given moment, instead of backfeeding that to the grid, which you might not get as much money or no money on that, you rather just store it. So it puts it straight to the Powerwall. So then later, when the sun is down, you can use that stored solar energy for your home's needs. So you can get the most out of your solar. You're not putting it back on the neighborhood. Be selfish, use it for yourself. It allows you to do that and control it. So that is, again, the solar self-consumption capability. And then, one of the great things about Powerwall 3 specifically, I know we got the Powerwall 2 box here, but
Yeah.
when it comes to Powerwall 3, it does have built-in solar inverter, which is great. And it can actually lower the cost of your overall solar installation. But I will tell people, because some people are coming to us saying, I already have solar, but I want to add Powerwall, but Powerwall 3, how do I do that? It already has solar in it. Well, if you have like micro inverters, for instance, which we're finding some people out there have, it's not a microinverter. It's not compatible with that, specifically with the inverters built into Powerwall 3. So, and some people are asking us to reconfigure their solar system to use the inverters. Us specifically, we're not solar focused or solar installer. For that reason, anytime we touch a solar system, it pretty much voids your warranty immediately. So that's really something you need to think about. Is that something that is worth doing in your case or not? And I find most people don't want to do that. So it's not an option. Doesn't mean Powerwall's not worth it for someone. It just, you wouldn't get maybe the most out of it. That's, say, someone that was using those inverters, because that can be pretty potent as far as efficiency and just making it overall kind of a more complete solution. But I wouldn't say that's a deal killer for anyone wanting to add Powerwall to an existing solar setup, which is what I did, for instance. So I still think it's a good idea. But ultimately, all these functionality, the seamless failover, mentioned the time-based control. We talked about solar self-consumption. These are all things that PowerShare does not do. It's not capable of doing that. I don't necessarily expect it to be able to do that anytime soon, but at least as of this recording, it's simply things that are not, it's not capable of doing.
In your opinion, how many of our customers, when they call and they're getting their Cybertruck and their PowerShare all set up, how many of those customers have Powerwall existing and how many don't?
So there's probably like less than 10% have Powerwall already that are reaching out to us. But there's a lot of people that are interested in it, and maybe I might get it later type scenario where I'm interested. I think I want it, but I might not be in this house maybe much longer. So is it worth putting that money into it, right? So maybe thinking about the next home.
Especially like you said, I mean, the next topic was like how many power walls are inside, the PowerShare, right? The Cybertruck.
Yeah, I mean, Powerwalls are expensive. When you add it up, I mean, let's just call it like $9,000-$10,000, just the battery, not installation, not the other supporting hardware and everything else. Just that alone. If you look at that cost, I mean, and put that equivalent to the Cybertruck capability, the Cybertruck is 9.4 Powerwalls.
Wow.
9.4. That
Okay.
that's the number as far as usable actual capacity. That is the equivalent of 9.4 Powerwalls. So if you have a Cybertruck, guess what? You already bought 9.4 Powerwalls. Pretty incredible. So getting another one, making it 10.4, 11.4, that's great. It certainly lasts a lot longer in the event of an outage. So I like that. You kind of got a Powerwall on wheels. Now you can use it in that way. So adding another one is, certainly there's value add, like I just described, but it's not the end all be all. I think it's still an immense value just with PowerShare alone.
Now, one of the other things that we talked about was, and this is unique. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Cybertruck will not operate in PowerShare mode below 20%, or can you manually adjust that like you do the state of charge, on your charging screen?
Yeah, so the default is 20%, right?
Default.
From what I understand, the software now allows you to adjust that. So if in a tough situation, someone is willing to sacrifice their
whole truck?
drivability.
Right.
I don't know if it'll go to zero though. I'm
Mhm.
not so confident,
Gotcha.
but software changes quickly, so that's
So
something to be
depending on like
aware of.
if it's plugged in, it's 100%. By the time it's plugged in, you might get 80%. So is that safe to say 80% of 9.4 Powerwalls is your true usability?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So maybe knock off a Powerwall, but even then, this is usable, right? Any
Right.
battery,
Right.
Powerwall, we say,
Sure.
13.5 kilowatt hour capacity. It's, how much is usable. That is usable, by the
Yeah.
way. So that's at least the specs they give us. So I would say that, yeah, you want to put a grain of salt in there and just say round it
I'm gonna
down a
throw
little
another
bit.
wrench.
Yeah.
let's say you are keeping your Cybertruck at 80% because you don't want to go the full 100%. So normal
Yeah.
state of charge is 80% now, and if it's 20, now you're looking at knocking off another 20% off of that. Maybe you're down to 7 Powerwalls or 6 Powerwalls, but it's still a hell of a deal if you think about it, because you actually have a vehicle that you're using, a transport vehicle, and it can back up as those Powerwalls. But like you said, the ancillary services and the seamless failover and the time based control, solar self consumption is like, these are all added benefits of having the Powerwall. We were scared and thinking that, of course, what's Tesla going to do now that the PowerShare is here, the Cybertruck is here? Is that going to cannibalize Powerwall sales? And then of course they come out and they drop the Powerwall 3 and all the benefits on that. It's like,
Huge benefits.
wow, this is pretty. So they do complement one another, but it's important that you understand the difference between the two. Now, I'm going to try to stomp you from our audience questions here. The first question we have is different configurations, new versus existing Powerwall, time frame for functionality of each. So go ahead and I guess explain what the audience members are kind of like wanting to know behind this question here. Different configurations, new versus existing Powerwalls, and the time frame for functionality of each.
Yes. So really, behind that question is, when is it going live? When can I, as a user of any given configuration, start backfeeding to my home and being able to power it in the event of a grid outage? And right now, as of this recording, currently people that have no Powerwall, just PowerShare only, and any type of solar is not part of the backed up loads, are capable of utilizing PowerShare today. So right now, I've already seen people. There were storms in Houston recently. We did installs for them, and they were able to back up their entire house. These are situations where they didn't have solar as part of the backup system, which is again an optional thing that it's possible to do that. And you could opt to not do that, just depending on the design and some other aspects. There are reasons not to do that. So it's not something that we have to do or necessary or even sometimes a good idea. Just depending on a couple factors. So, but if you just have no solar as part of it, and no Powerwall or anything else, you can start doing it today. And we've seen people do it. It's worked great. I had several people say they last for 3-4+ days,
Wow.
seamless, no issues. I think that that's amazing. So
Okay.
that's awesome. So the next is, what if I do have solar as part of the backup loads, and or I have Powerwall installed already?
Mhm.
So in those situations, we're looking at software is really the only limitation there. And that's where we're looking at Q3, Q4. I think originally it was June is what we were told by Tesla, and we know now that it's looking to be later in the year. I'm guessing Q4 is what I expect as far as that software going live. So you're gonna have to go, hurry up and wait on that one, unfortunately. But it is important, if you do have Powerwall currently, you're set for having PowerShare. It's just important that your wall connector, the charger, is part of the backed up circuits, right? And so how do you figure that out or know if that's the case? Because it may not be the case depending on when your Powerwall was installed,
Right.
how it was configured.
Right.
So that's something to think about, is if you turn off the breaker for the power coming to your home, Powerwall should kick on, plug in to the Tesla or any other vehicle, whatever it is, it just go ahead and see if it'll charge it. And if it charges it and grid's turned off, then that charger is part of the backup circuit. If anything that you might want to look at too is it on a 40 amp circuit, 50 amp circuit? You might want to change it to a 60 amp if it is. So 60 amp is best because it allows you to get the most out of what the Cybertruck can offer. So that's the other part of it that is a requirement if you have Powerwall, to make sure you can get the most out of the PowerShare functionality.
Okay, so like we talked about, if you have Powerwalls and you have a regular, let's say Gen 3 wall connector, okay, and you have your Cybertruck, you don't necessarily need to change that wall connector to a universal wall connector like you would in the event that you had an existing wall connector and now you have your Cybertruck with your Cybertruck 3V gateway,
PowerShare,
right?
yeah,
PowerShare gateway.
yeah,
That's where you need to go ahead and change that from a regular
yeah.
wall connector to a universal wall.
And that's where Tesla's telling us, and it's definitely the case we're seeing is, again, if you have Powerwall already, backup, the charger's part of the backup loads, you don't need a universal wall connector in that case. It's just not necessary. Really, any version of the wall connector, even the Gen 1 wall connector, will work in that scenario. So you just, ideally want it to be a 60 amp circuit, so it'll get the most out of the Cybertruck. It could even be a non-Tesla charger, which is pretty crazy. I don't know. Obviously, there's some chargers that don't have the
That's
electronics
crazy. Yeah.
that allow
Okay.
backfeeding. So
Okay.
that could be a concern or an issue. So I still recommend the wall connector. I still think it's the best solution for charging a Tesla today. So that's what I'd recommend. But otherwise, it's according to them, it's not necessary.
Okay. So let's go into. We went from different configurations. Now let's look at the different gateways. And so there's a lot of talk about like how many different gateways are there and backup switches and Powerwall 2 and Powerwall Plus and whatever. So you look at 2 versus 3V, pros and cons, compatibility with Powerwall 3, islanding, site controller, site metering. Let's talk about that. Let's get it all out in the open. Let's really kind of, man, let's clear the ways with regards to exactly how this stuff works and what we're seeing on the ground side and experiencing. So let's go ahead and share that with our audience members.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that we see with the gateways is, first of all, it's just what do they do, right? The simplest is, it ultimately is acting as one like an islanding controller, meaning that if the grid goes out, it senses it, knows it, and then it completely cuts off the home or the backup loads from the grid, which is extremely important, required by National Electric Code. It's also required in order to ensure that the line workers working out on the utility side are safe and no power is backfeeding to the grid side. So extremely important. That's called islanding. Just like it sounds, you're stuck on an island, it can't get off. That's the goal there, and that's what a gateway does. That's what the backup switch is capable of doing. Then you have site controller, which is actually basically the brains of the operation. And so Tesla over the years has iterated on that site controller by putting it into an all-in-one device. So that's where you got Powerwall Plus, and now we have Powerwall 3 that has that controller built into it, which is great because it just consolidates things and actually makes it easier too if you have backup switch involved. There are configurations where you don't need a gateway at all. That's not necessary, assuming it's Powerwall. When I say that, by the
Yes.
way. So again, this is where it gets kind of confusing, but and then you have site metering as well. So one of the great functionality pieces of the gateway too, or gateway in general as well, is ultimately the fact that it does site metering. So you can monitor a separate solar array, you can monitor, say, a generator feed that's also supplementing the Powerwall. In the case of a Powerwall is actually included. So that's where it's doing more. It's kind of the brains of the operation, controlling everything. But again, there's multiple configurations where a gateway is not needed. 3V gateway is specifically designed for PowerShare. That's it. That's what it is
The
specifically
3V
meant for.
gateway.
3V. So let's start at the beginning though. Let's just go back in time.
Yes.
V2 gateway started when Powerwall 2 was introduced, right? So I think of it as the first gateway, but it's called the Gateway
Kind of
2.
similar,
Yes.
right? Cap or
Yeah, it's a
covering.
similar faceplate. Actually, early Gateway 2s didn't even have this. So just because you don't have a white faceplate on your maybe Powerwall 2 gateway doesn't mean that it's necessarily not a V2, but it was a very short period where they transitioned to this glass front. And again, their Gateway 1 was out there. So V2 gateway, it ultimately introduced it in such a way that it had the same functionality as the 1, but also made it a lot easier to install. It was more capable. So allowed it just ultimately made us as installers easier to design the Powerwall installation, easier to work in more customer environments across many different situations and configurations, sizes of electric services. And it also just ultimately just made it lower cost. So it lowered the labor cost. It made it simpler so we didn't have to purchase as many other outside electrical materials or additional sub panels. So those are the types of functionalities V2 added. So then we look at now V3 gateway, which is a latest gateway that's really more designed for, it's really just designed for Powerwall. Just plain and simple. It's called Gateway 3, V3 if you want, but they call it Gateway 3. And it was only recently introduced. And the idea is that that's really for Powerwall 3, but it doesn't work with any type of AC coupled solar. So say in my case, I already have solar at my house. If I just want to add Powerwall, all right, I'm going to get a Powerwall 3. I'm not going to use the integrated inverters, solar inverters that are built into Powerwall 3. Then in that case, I can do that and add Powerwall 3 to my existing site, but I have to use the V2 gateway. And the reason that is, I wouldn't use Gateway 3 is because V2 gateway has the ability to monitor, do metering for the solar output of my third-party solar inverters, which is extremely important because then it tracks that. So when solar self-consumption is turned on, it's going to track solar based on that metering of the solar system, right? Obviously, if we're using the inverters that are built into the Powerwall 3, it knows exactly how much power and is coming from the the PV or solar array, so it doesn't need a separate metering per se.
Okay.
It's built and integrated into it. So the Powerwall 3, again, a lot of great things about it is that it has a lot of parts of it are built into the system. So that's why if you have Powerwall 3, you might not even need or want a gateway. It's just not necessary because you have like backup switch doing the islanding and metering for the grid side. So it ultimately makes things easier and lower the cost. That's the key. Tesla's really been great about making it easier for us installers, spend less time on site, then pass that on to the customers, so they're not having to spend as much money. It just makes it more accessible for more people. So I'm all for it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Your solar setup, is it microinverters or string?
I have string.
Got it.
Yes, I don't have any shading on my roof, and also mine was installed back in 2015. So microinverters weren't so big then, but I still like string. I think they're great. Some people say aren't so hot on them, but I think it's really a great technology. I think the way Tesla did it is good. I don't think they're going to support at all any type of micro inverters at this point. I think string is the way to go, and they set it up in such a way that if there is shading or is any concerns about that, there are ways to design it, configure it so it won't be an issue. So they're pretty thoughtful about it. So I think it's still a great solution. I wouldn't not get it just because it's a string inverter. I don't think that's the way to go. But hey, talk to a solar designer, installer, and they'll be able to give you more details based on your unique situation.
So you went in, described V2 gateway.
We got V3, right?
V3 gateway. Now we're going to switch. We're going to go 3V. Let's talk about 3V.
3V gateway. So it's the PowerSHARE gateway, let's call it. So they called it 3V against my wishes, but who am I? Who am I? So it's really it's like the power or the gateway 3. It's really very similar, but the difference is it has a neutral balancing transformer. And what is that, and why does that exist? Well, the reason is because if you just have PowerSHARE and it's just the Cybertruck supplying power to your home, the power coming from a wall connector or from the vehicle is only 2 hots and a ground. It's 3 wires. And any system that's on any home is going to be a 4-wire system, or they call it a 3-wire system, but it's 3 wires plus ground. So there's 2 hots, neutral, and a ground. So L1, L2, neutral, and ground. And that's what allows any type of single pole breaker or lower voltage circuits, 120 volt circuits, they'll have that neutral in there. It must have that. Usually that's supplied by the utility on the utility transformer. That's where that's coming from. In this case, it's not coming from a utility transformer. So it's coming from the vehicle, and the vehicle doesn't have that neutral. So therefore, that neutral balancing transformer inside the 3V gateway is providing that neutral. And that's why it's key. You have to have the 3V gateway if you want PowerShare with your Cybertruck to power your home. And it has that functionality. It makes it a lot heavier. It actually makes it extremely heavy. And it's a lot more copper. It's a lot more to it. And that's why, we don't know the price on 3V gateway. I expect it to be a lot more compared to just any of the other gateways that Tesla has because of that unique application of having the neutral balancing transformer.
Okay, interesting. Okay. And that's ultimately, you said just don't worry about gateways.
Just don't worry about it. Like any good Tesla installer or designer has that figured out. There's so many scenarios. If you have a meter panel combo and you're in California, which is very common, there are a lot of ways to get around that. Backup switch is perfect for that. There's some utilities don't allow backup switch. Yes, it lowers the cost, but if the utility doesn't allow it, you can do a second meter besides it, which Tesla does in some case. Again, I can go through 20 different variations on why I would do one or the other, or depending on the home and the size of the home.
Geeks watching this, by the way.
Yes,
some real geeks that want another episode and go all in on that. But we'll
hey, give us a call for your situation, and I'll explain to you why I would design it a certain way, and make it the best for you based on your needs.
Okay. Number 3, potential for vehicle to home power without losing grid power. What's up with that?
Yeah, so one of the cool things with Powerwall is that anytime, like right now on my home, I can get on the Tesla app and I can say go off grid. Just go into the app and then bam, Powerwall cuts in, starts providing power to my home.
Manual.
Right?
It's not like we talked about the time-based, control thing. This is more of a manual thing. So if you're right there, you're not doing anything at home, you want to go ahead and live off of your Cybertruck for a couple of hours, go ahead.
Well, the idea is that let's assume that you have your Cybertruck plugged in. You got your 3V gateway, you're set to go, and you just want to switch over. You can get in the Tesla app, hit start providing power to the home. So there's a button in there. You can do that, but there will be downtime. So at least a couple seconds, if not
I heard. I
potentially
mean,
more.
last it was like 1 or 2 seconds. Like it's not really
Yeah.
that. They've gotten it really down packed to where it's ultimately the test would be once it rolls over, does your internet go out and has to reboot?
Yeah, but even
If it's
then, like
fast
if
enough.
that's your biggest pain, like you can get a little UPS,
I know.
little
Everybody's streaming these days,
uninterruptible
man.
power
Everyone's
supply,
streaming. I
and
got
you,
people streaming right now. You
yeah,
know, everyone's streaming.
it'll
So
keep your internet up for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, worst case, and you're covered, you're fine. So that if that's really the only concern, I mean, do that. But I'll tell you though, 3V Gateway and Cybertruck are not designed for you to just on demand say, "Hey, I wanted to power my home." I'll do that every day. It's not designed for that. It's not meant for that. It's the duty cycle and the components inside are meant for that type of use case. So it's got a 10-year warranty on it, which is exceptional. On all this hardware that we're installing for you. So just know that, it's not meant for you to just kind of do it on demand and just power the whole home on a whim. So I would just tell people that doesn't mean you can't do it. I'm not stopping you from doing it.
fair
It's
enough.
possible to do it in theory, but it's not designed for that. And Tesla does document that it is not supported to do it or use it in that way.
All right, Blue Drew. Thanks. All right, so let's go into I guess number four, which is potential for vehicle to grid applications. Again, I mean, you just talked about vehicle to home power. Most people are wanting to know if they can cheat the system and make a VPP out of their Cybertruck. So go ahead and explain to our audience a little bit more on that end.
Yeah, so as far as the vehicle to grid, currently it's very well documented inside the Tesla literature for us installers that it is not something that is currently supported. It's not allowed for it to operate in that manner, which is really important for them to say that, number one. So I'm saying the documentation says that. One, because I have to give this potentially to uh, a permitting authority, an inspector that comes out to the home. And that's one of the number one things that they're going to be concerned about is will this backfeed to the grid? Because that's not allowed in a majority of situations. Also, safety concern. Like I said, when the grid goes out, if power is allowed to flow back to the grid, we got line workers out there. It's extremely dangerous. So that's why, first of all, they don't allow that. And it's not something that's supported currently. Plus, what makes things a lot easier code wise and installation wise for us is the fact that there's a break and a make, meaning that there's a break of connection, an actual downtime where power is not being allowed to flow in between the grid and the home. That period of time is key because that also makes it so from UL requirements, NEC requirements for that it changes and actually makes it a lower cost item. It's less likely to be concerned for the utility side. So that's where it makes it a lot simpler and straightforward for us, lower cost for customers, easier on the technology design as well. And ultimately, the make or break. That's it. We're Powerwall seamless. We have a lot of HJs that are clamping down on the actual requirements for us to install battery storage, safety requirements, where we can and can't put each component. That is honestly kind of restrictive. Makes sense. It's for safety, but ultimately, it's one of those things that we, just to keep it in front of us all the time.
Fair enough. Guys, go ahead and click thumbs up icon if you can. Help us out a little bit. You mentioned a TLA, which is a three-letter acronym. AHJ. Go ahead and explain that to our audience, please.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
we live it all day long. AHJ is authority having jurisdiction. So that could be your local county, it could be your city, your township, your parish. It could be it could be the fire department, local fire department that they have jurisdiction depending on what you're doing, how you're doing it, what's getting installed. So that just depends on where you live. It's ultimately just a terminology used by National Electric Code very commonly to just say, hey, whatever that AHJ or authority having jurisdiction is going to either allow or not allow, you'll need to reference them. So, and that can overrule National Electric Code as well.
It's pretty much where you're pulling your permits, folks.
Yeah.
Where do I go to pull my permit? Or do I need a permit? All that good stuff. So, all right, we get number five. Why not just use the NEMA 1450 outlet in the truck bed with a generator interlock? This was a good one. This one's a good one because most of the time, we're going in and we're setting up, and people are using what little gas generators with a interlock connected to their panel to be able to operate their house when the storm goes and knocks out their power. Right. This is if they don't want to afford, if they don't want to do the power walls or if they don't have a Cybertruck yet. Right. So Why not just use a Nemo 1450 in the truck? Why have to go through all of this? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, first of all, because again, this is a common configuration. Some people get a NEMO 1450, 240-volt outlet, 50 amp capable rating, and they'll get a generator, gas generator, and plug it in to that outlet. And again, also important part here is get a generator interlock installed, which again, more importantly, it stops power from backfeeding to the grid. Absolutely essential here. So if you have a NEMO 1450 already installed in your home, it's really important to understand that any type of power source coming back on that must not be able to backfeed the grid. So there's specific hardware that must be installed in order to do that. So now we have a Cybertruck. It's not a generator, right? But it is a source of power. It's another power source at the home. Mobile power source, what National Electric Code calls that. They also call it basically an optional or standby power source. So a couple different code articles that oversee that. But ultimately, it's something that you could get a cable and plug it into the bed of the Cybertruck and then into that, in this case, NEMA 1450 with an interlock, which could power the home. But why not do that? Well, it's nowhere near as safe as PowerShare. First of all, I mean, these cords that you would need to use to plug in, you can find them on Amazon, but they're extremely dangerous because of the idea that anyone can go in there and either trip on it or start to pull on it. And if you have a full load going through that, you'll get arcs, you'll get sparks, it'll get real bad real quick, it'll overheat, it'll cause problems.
But if you are doing it, just make sure your cord is matching that amperage that it's about to deliver to it, right?
Yeah,
That's one of the more important things. If you're going to do it, we can't keep you from doing it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do it, just make sure that the cord is rated for what it needs to be rated, and make sure your connections are tight, right? We're not recommending anything. We're not financial advisors. I don't know. I keep hearing that when people go live. But for the most part, yeah, that's okay. So that's really good. And you
Yes,
said
so
it's
that's
less
first. Yeah,
powerful,
it
right?
just because you see a cord that has that capability doesn't mean it's actually sized correctly for the use case. It does not. There's RV cords out there. There's all these different type of cords you can get on Amazon or just even reputable vendors. But ultimately, they're used in this scenario can be extremely dangerous for a number of reasons. Like I already mentioned, that it's not a good solid connection. It's a temporary connection. It's something that could be someone can mess with. It's not hardwired. It's not properly, necessarily torqued down like a hard wire would be. So those are all reasons that cause overheating and problems during operation. Additionally, it's a manual process. You'd have to go out to your Cybertruck, say it happens at 1 a.m. If it was PowerShare would just click on and you'd probably wake up with power. It'd be good. But otherwise, you wake up, there's no power. It'd be really hot, really cold, depending on the situation. You're going to have to go out there, find that cord, plug it in, change your interlock so it's isolated from the grid, turn it back on, which again, all your neighbors could have power at that point, but you wouldn't know, say an hour later. So it is manual. Plus, the PowerShare system is time limited when you're just using the bed of the truck outlets. So it will cut off after a certain period of time, which will probably be sooner than you'd like or prefer. So it's kind of a pain, but it's just extremely risky. It's also less powerful. So the PowerShare system on a 60 amp circuit is not as much as the 50 amp. And in addition, you'd say, hey, let's just, 10 amps difference. It's more than that. It's also the starting loads. So that bed outlet isn't capable, is the power that's coming directly from the charging port into the wall connector in this case. For instance, if you have an AC that starts up, has a high power draw to get going, that NEMA 1450 will not be capable of handling those higher loads, and it could potentially fault and trip basically the circuit inside the truck bed, and it'll shut off entirely.
Yeah.
So that's what you're looking at.
That when we tried to plug in the Model S to there, and depending on whatever, we had to kind of configure it, like let's go down to 30 amps or even more, like 24 amps.
Yeah, we saw when we were pulling a lot of power from that. You can go watch that video, and you can see out there that as soon as we started pulling near the max, we saw a voltage drop significant. So it's not really designed for that use case. We don't see that with PowerShare. Certainly, we haven't observed that.
Just be wary of that, right? And running your AC units with those high peak load, appliances.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't really have anything else. I do have live audience questions here. Model Y 2023 with bidirectional charging be available soon?
So a Model Y with bidirectional charging. So what Tesla told us at the beginning of this year, earlier this year, is that within 2 years, all Teslas coming out of the factory will have PowerShare functionality. So that means that getting this 3V gateway installed at your home, we get the universal wall connector installed there. You will be able to plug it into your Tesla 2 years from now to be able to power the home, not just a Cybertruck. So I don't expect it to be this year. It'd probably be 2025 at the soonest.
Let's call it 2026, just to be safe.
Yeah,
You
because
know?
there's a lot of hardware
Right.
that is installed on this Cybertruck to make this as seamless as it is.
Yeah.
We have one piece of hardware installing and a wall connector. Like that's amazing. If you look at the GM system, if you look at the Ford equivalent system,
4 or
you
5
we're gonna like
components.
4 or 5 different components, tons of wall space taken up,
At minimum.
tons more labor for us to install that. Tesla's made it extremely simple, not only from their design and experience with Powerwall, but also because so much is built into the vehicle itself. So it's really not something you can just quickly, easily modify an existing vehicle to just say, hey, I want to work with my, 3V gateway and wall connector and plug it in so I can power my home. That's not something that I expect in this year, 2024. It'll probably be 2025 at the soonest. If anything, if it's like I'd expect to be Model S and X would be next, and then 3Y and whatever else is at that time in 2026 will probably be available.
We'll know in August 8th.
Yeah,
8/8,
we
baby.
might. We'll find out, right?
Okay, so I mean, obviously, from the conversation, you just kind of simply have to know the options that you have based on your configuration, and then based on your configuration and what you're looking to do, then that will ultimately determine whether or not, well, like, what type of gateway that you're looking for,
Yes.
right? But fundamentally, I mean, if you have your Cybertruck and you don't have power walls or existing solar, all you need is the gateway and the universal mobile connector or universal wall connector. Sorry. If you do have power walls and you have a wall connector and you have a Tesla and you're whatever, and then you just buy a Cybertruck and that's your second Tesla of the day, right? You don't really need anything else. Everything else is taken care of for you. All you need is a software update that will be available come, like you said, what, fourth quarter this year? Maybe?
Yes.
Maybe? Curb your enthusiasm on that?
Yes. Don't set your clocks yet.
So you do have to understand the inner workings of your like your actual home layout, right? Does it make a difference whether or not you're backing up your entire home's electric panel, or if you're having like a smaller critical load backup system that you're using? Does that make a difference with regards to how?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a big difference in usually the cost of it. It makes a difference in how quickly we can install it. It makes a difference on, probably how long it'll last in the event of an outage that occurs. So that's also a consideration. But oftentimes we're looking at ease of installation to just and also make it lower cost for people.
Right.
That's not everyone's priority. I get it, but there's a number of people that come to us and that say that, hey, I just want it within a certain cost, certain budget, and we can do that. There's a lot of ways that we can adjust the design to meet the budgetary needs. It might have to sacrifice a little on what is backed up, but it is absolutely possible, multiple ways to configure this. And certainly, you talk with us if we get a quote from us, or just talk with us in general about what that looks like and what can be covered and what cannot. So every home is different. We got 6,000 square foot homes. We got 2,000 square foot homes, everywhere in between, more, less. They're all different loads, different size panels, different age panels, different type of services, locations, electric, system size. So that there's so much into it. Every single one is uniquely designed when you come to us, and we definitely spend the time to figure out what we think is best. We start with that, and then we try to get feedback from customers to figure out what their priorities are.
That's right. So we're in 32 cities across America right now. Our goal is to get in the top 50 EV friendly metropolitan area cities, hopefully by the end of this year. So that's kind of a really aggressive goal that we're shooting towards. But if you are in some of the current locations that we are servicing, definitely reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Now we were a part of like one of the first companies that actually tandem with Tesla and their employees, because we're here in Austin. The Cybertruck's being built in Giga, Texas, a few miles down the road. Like, we were instrumental in all that. But since then, like, our customers are getting, even in other territories that we are servicing, our customers are getting, I guess, certified installers like from other companies. Like, can our customers or anyone out there, if they're inside of the city that we service, can they reach out to Smart Charge America, and can Smart Charge America provide those services for them?
Yeah, we're 100% certified by Tesla. In fact, I was told we're one of the absolute first install of the PowerSHARE gateway happened
Got the video
through Smart Charge America. So that was many months ago. So we're extremely familiar with it. We work very closely with their support team and deployment teams. And all you need to do if you're getting a Cybertruck or have a Cybertruck on the way, you got the VIN, you don't have the VIN, you want PowerShare, you just go to our website, and actually you can go to smartchargeamerica.com. And there's a get a quote link at the top. Get the home quote for a home install of a charger. You indicate you have a Cybertruck, and we'll adjust that quote accordingly, assuming we're going to go ahead and do PowerShare for you,
Nice.
which isn't required, of course. You don't have to have PowerShare. Maybe some people want to add it later. That's fine too. But ultimately, we want to set it up to get the most out of the vehicle that you invested in.
Okay, got another question here. It says, for Foundation Series owners, will Tesla allow a $2,500 credit to be used for equipment that is not 3V gateway or universal wall connector?
Yeah, as it is currently, as of this recording, they're allowing a $2,500 Tesla Shop voucher that allows people to purchase whatever they want. It could be the 3V Gateway Universal Wall Connector, could be just a bunch of T-shirts and fun gifts for the family. That's fine too. That's up to you, but it gives you the choice. I really love this kind of change they had. They were doing different things like supercharging miles and maybe less of a credit and not really allowing much flexibility. Now it just anything in the Tesla shop, which could be a lot of accessories. Plenty of accessories out there now that you can add if you'd like, or get the wrap maybe from Tesla. So that's all good stuff.
How does it differentiate between the $4,000 installation credit? Is that still on par with the Foundation Series?
Yeah. So if you get a Foundation Series and you get a Cyber Beast, again, you get the
Beast.
fully loaded tri-motor Cyber Beast. Yes, you get up to $4,000 installation credit.
Okay.
As of this recording.
Gotcha.
So that's how they have designed, so that can make it even easier for you. As far as that being
you also
adjusted.
Get the $2,500 credit in addition to the $4,000 installation credit with Cyber Beast?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. At least as of right now, they don't specifically really talk about it. They don't really give you an answer on it. So that's what I got for you right now. At least what they're communicating with us. So
we got another one that says, do you think PowerShare will eventually be able to power the house without grid outage via time shift? We talked about that, right? It's not ideal, but you probably could.
Yeah, you could. It definitely wouldn't be smooth. It wouldn't be easy.
Right.
It's not designed to do that. So no, I don't expect that to be a real good or really a use case at all based on how this product is designed, how it's meant to work. So some people have talked to me about that, and when I explained to them the trade-offs of even attempting to do that, it's painful enough that it's just not worth it. It's not automated. It's not in any way configured to do that. It would be 100% manual process. It's pretty clunky, and will likely cause problems. So it's really not a solution.
Sweet. Any other final thoughts, like value conclusions from maybe some of the stuff that you've learned over, and you want to kind of express to our audience members that are kind of thinking about this? I mean, honestly, I was very, very surprised on the amount of people that we talked to about the Cybertruck and getting their just their regular wall connector installed in Cyber. They don't even know about this credit, and the installation credit and the gateway and the backup and the PowerShare. They don't know. Some of them don't know. And they're so giddy about stuff. They're just not really Tesla geeks like we are, and a lot of our audience members are. So, I mean, give us a little something that maybe a little Easter egg for our audience members, if you have one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing and also a very common question that I get is why does this cost what it costs? I mean, because it could vary a lot. It could be anywhere from 2,000, 3,500. I've seen some crazy quotes out there on the forums for 30,000 or more, which honestly I think is kind of criminal, but that's just.
Well, the guy had a 400 or 600 system and everything else.
So even us seasoned electricians can come to the conclusion that, hey, that's criminal, but you really got to look at every situation as a unique situation, because like you said, the size of the service, the home, the future growth, what are the long-term goals? Some people tell me that I'm looking to add addition to my home or add a second home or a pool house. There's all these scenarios that we help and really meet their needs, not only now but in the future. I don't like doing work now that I know is going to be ripped out later. That's not worth it. So that's one of those things where it's I really want, first of all, people to understand that there's a lot of time that we put into the design of these systems. It's not something where we just send a quote and say, hey, this is, it costs this much.
Right.
Good luck. Sorry, one size fits all. No, every single one is custom designed. In our case, every single one is custom fitted. There's additional hardware we need to do. There's information that we have to use to be able to properly design, say, a soft start device on the AC because of startup loads. There's all these little technical requirements that, number one, we have to meet Tesla's requirements. So you get your 10-year warranty, which is extremely important for us. We have to do that. You want that. You don't want us to do something that's going to put you out of compliance with Tesla's warranty. It can be extremely easy To do that, if you don't know what you're doing and you don't design it correctly and you just try to install it, say random electrician, two, there's a whole configuration and commissioning process that we have to do for this to actually work. And there's a significant amount of photos and information we feed to Tesla. So they know that everything was installed 100% up to their requirements to get that 10-year warranty. And so if you call in for support at any point, 5 years, 8 years later, they have everything they need to properly support your situation, your problem you might be experiencing. So they've really been extremely thoughtful about this. They put us through a lot of training in order to properly and safely install this hardware. So there's so much more that goes into it. And I just want to make sure people understand that on the back end. Because it's, if we were really quick on site, we get it done in, 8 hours, which is, great. It could be less. That so much more work went into it to prepare that
Than what meets the eye.
than what meets the eye. And it's you could tell me what you want about that, but ultimately I see it every day and I deal with it every day and all the conversations that I have and the different designs that we do, different unique situations. But ultimately we're here to work with you. So anyone that wants to come to us with a specific budget, I'll tell you if it's possible or not, or what I need to do to help you meet your budget. And ultimately meet your needs, short term, long term. That's what we're about. I think it's a great product, and I wish I had it. I look forward to getting that for a Tesla one day, power my home. But ultimately, we're waiting right now. But yeah,
Are you going to get a Cybertruck?
I don't think I'm gonna get a Cybertruck. Nah, I'm not a truck guy.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's okay. Look, when that Model Y hits in 2026, I know you're right. You're right. You're right on it. So,
Mhm.
guys, look, thank you so much to our listeners and subscribers today for joining us. Look, I hope today's episodes brought you, a little more value to your day. And trust me, we love you. We can't do this without you. So definitely appreciate your time and consideration and joining us today. Go ahead and click the thumbs up icon if you haven't already. Share, comment, subscribe to our channel if you think we earned it. And again, guys, look, remember, you can reach us at any time at smartchargeramerica.com. I mean, for anything, any and all services, whether it be in the home, commercial, or service, we're here because of you guys. And so we love you. Again, remember, if you can't charge, you can't drive. And we'll see you on the next one. Cheers, guys.